The US President Joe Biden has described Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approach to the war in Gaza as a mistake. And this is Biden's sharpest critique of how the Israeli government is handling the conflict with Hamas. Biden made the statement during an interview with Univision that was taped just days after Israeli military strikes killed 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers.
I kept my word. I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those 3 vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has said that Hamas has been presented a very serious offer for a truce and hostage deal. The proposal was handed by Egyptian and Qatari mediators at talks in Cairo. However, Hamas, in their response, said that the Israeli proposal on a ceasefire did not meet the demands of Palestinian militant factions, but it would study the offer further and deliver its response to mediators. Now, on the eve of Eid al-Fitr, an airstrike on residential buildings in the Nusayrat refugee camp in the central Gaza region killed at least 14 Palestinians. The Hamas-run health ministry shared these figures. Other airstrikes were reported in Deir al-Bala in central Gaza and Rafah in the far south. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly flagged plans for a ground assault on Rafah, where more than 1 million displaced civilians are holed up. Despite international pleas for restraint, according to sources, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, in a phone call to the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, specified that so far no date has been finalized for the Israeli operation in Rafah. Meanwhile, the British government has decided not to halt sales of arms to Israel by British companies. The statement was made by UK Foreign Minister David Cameron 6 months into the Israeli air and ground campaign in Gaza, triggered by Hamas' October 7th attack on southern Israel. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government has come under heavy pressure to revoke licenses that allow arms exports to Israel. Crisis in the Red Sea continues to spiral, as in the latest, the US military said that it had destroyed an inbound anti-ship ballistic missile over the Gulf of Aden that was launched by Iranian-backed Houthis and likely targeted the MV Yorktown. According to US Central Command's post on social media platform X, no injuries or damage was reported. Houthi attacks have disrupted global shipping through the Suez Canal, forcing firms to reroute to longer and more expensive journeys around southern Africa. The militants, who control the most populous part of Yemen, call their action a response to Israel's military operations in Gaza and a show of solidarity with the Palestinians. Our correspondent Susan Tehrani sent us this report earlier on why President Biden's reluctance to support a Rafah offensive doesn't seem to be enough to stop Netanyahu from going ahead with it. Listen to this.
Despite President Biden's reservations about the potential consequences of a large-scale operation in Rafah, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be determined to proceed with the offensive. The Israeli government has a history of disregarding U.S. concerns and pursuing its own military objectives. And it seems that Netanyahu is willing to do so again in this case. Now, it's important to note that Israel says that it's absolutely necessary to root out a terrorist infrastructure in Gaza, including Hamas's leadership and military cache, also citing the threat from Iranian-backed groups.
Susan further explained the implications of the support that U.S. is providing towards a hostage deal in Gaza and what kind of effect that will have. Listen to this.
A U.S. support for the hostage deal in Gaza could help perhaps cool tensions in the region, particularly as it's near the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. However, the deal would also require Israel to release Palestinian prisoners, which could be controversial domestically, notably for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Additionally, the deal would not address the underlying issue of the conflict, and the U.S. and Israel would still need to develop a day-after plan for Gaza once those hostages are released.